Tonight, Lord Mandelson sacked as Keir Starmer's man in Washington after the latest revelations about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. For the third time in his political career, Mandelson is forced out from a senior role just days before Donald Trump's state visit to the UK. The questions now about the Prime Minister's judgment as Sky News reveals that the security services had warned Number 10 about giving him the job. Also tonight, Lucy Powell and Bridget Phillipson set to be the only two candidates for the Labour deputy leadership. But without a champion of the left, does the contest risk becoming a battle of the Blands? As authorities in Utah step up the search for a person of interest in relation to the killing of Conservative activist Charlie Kirk, a Western democracy is now facing a crisis of political violence. Plus, we report on allegations of bullying and harassment in one of the country's biggest trade unions. And the political dogs turning heads in Westminster. But who won the best in show? No pause for thought tonight from our panel. I'm not apologising for that pun, by the way. Baroness Diane Hayter and James Starkey, who'll be with us for the next hour. It's Thursday, I'm Sophy Ridge live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. Hello, good evening. I just want to take a moment to bring you some reports we're just getting through right now. And this is from Washington, because we're told that the police are currently responding to an incident at the Democratic National Committee HQ in Washington. This coming to us via our partners NBC. Senate officers just receiving a notice informing staff to avoid that HQ as police respond to an incident. Sources saying it is actually a bomb threat investigation. They're sweeping the building. No evidence of those explosives so far. But, of course, we'll keep an eye on that for you and bring you any developing lines on that as it happens. Back to the UK now, because Lord Mandelson is gone, sacked as ambassador to the United States over his relationship with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And there are now serious questions for Keir Starmer about why he was given the job in the first place, particularly after my colleague Sam Coates has discovered that Number 10 appointed him despite security flagging their concerns. But I did just want to talk about Lord Mandelson himself for a moment, because you know what gets me about stories like this? It's the refusal to accept responsibility. This is what happened when our US correspondent James Matthews tried to ask Lord Mandelson questions about Epstein back in May.
My knowledge of him is something that I regret. I wish I'd never met him in the first place.
Why did you have an association with him? Because he was in jail at the time.
Why did many people meet him? He was a prolific networker, and I wish I'd never met him in the first place.
Now, here's the thing. Lord Mandelson's team were actually pretty angry with James for having the audacity to ask questions like that. And Mandelson himself was even more direct with the Financial Times when they tried to ask him about Epstein. So this is what he told them. He said, I'm not going to go into this. It's an FT obsession, and frankly, you can all F off, OK? Now, I haven't learned much as a journalist, but the one thing I have learned is that the more someone doesn't want you to ask particular questions, the more you've got to keep asking them. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, has our first report this evening.
Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson, the paedophile and the peer. This a friendship that endured even beyond Epstein's convictions, and one that on Thursday ended Lord Mandelson's political career. The Prime Minister and his Foreign Secretary concluding this morning the US ambassador had to go, this minister delivering the news.
The Prime Minister has asked the Foreign Secretary to withdraw him as ambassador to the United States. The emails show, Mr. Speaker, that the depth and extent of Lord Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is materially different from that known at the time of his appointment.
These are the emails that sealed Lord Mandelson's fate. Leaked to Bloomberg News, these exchanges reveal Peter Mandelson remained supportive of Epstein even after he was convicted for sex trafficking underage girls. I think the world of you, he wrote to Epstein on the day he went to prison. And Mandelson suggested the fast charge for sex offences against Epstein was wrong, as he urged his friend to fight. Your friends stay with you and love you. These are the bombshell revelations that prompted the PM to dismiss his ambassador, but the questions had been coming for months.
In June 2009, did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
He was in jail at the time for soliciting prostitution from a minor.
And my knowledge of him is something that I regret. I wish I'd never met him in the first place.
And questions for the PM too. At Prime Minister's Questions this week, Keir Starmer was still defending his ambassador.
Mr. Speaker, the relationship between the US and the UK is one of our foremost relationships, and I have confidence in the ambassador in the role that he is doing.
Sky News understands Number 10 appointed Lord Mandelson despite concerns raised by security services. The leader of the opposition calling for full transparency.
He knew that Peter Mandelson had said that there are more revelations to come. I think that is part of evidence that he has extremely bad judgment. We want to see all the papers and know all the information that surrounds Peter Mandelson's hiring in the first place.
This is not the first time Lord Mandelson's resigned in disgrace. He stepped down as Trade Secretary in the Blair administration over a loan from a colleague he failed to register. He then had to quit again.
I am today resigning from the government.
This time as Northern Ireland Secretary over a cash for passports scandal. But he held on to his constituency of Hartlepool.
They underestimated me because I am a fighter and not a quitter.
And made an eyebrow-raising return to the front bench under Gordon Brown. But Mandelson has always been controversial, even amongst his own.
It's shameful that Peter Mandelson didn't resign in the national interest, in the interest of the government, but he's not that sort of person, so it was right that Keir Starmer sacked him.
When those toe-curling emails were released showing Peter Mandelson clearly supporting a convicted sex offender, it was obvious he had to go. And the Prime Minister did execute a swift about-turn and sacked him. But this is really grave for Keir Starmer. The damage has been done. 2 weeks into a reset, 2 scandals, 2 senior people leaving his government. All of it casts a very long shadow over his promise to clean up politics, and all of it raises serious questions about his political judgment as Prime Minister. It also casts a shadow over the upcoming state visit for US President Trump, with the White House, royal family and the UK government all tarnished by association with sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, an issue they all wanted to avoid, now top of the agenda. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, in the last hour, Sky News has seen a letter sent today by Peter Mandelson. It's addressed to staff at the embassy in Washington. Just want to read it to you now. It says, the circumstances surrounding the announcement today are ones which I deeply regret. I continue to feel utterly awful about my association with Epstein 20 years ago and the plight of his victims. I have no alternative to accepting the Prime Minister's decision and will leave a position in which I have been so incredibly honoured to serve. He then goes on to continue, the relationship between Britain and the United States of America is a unique one. We leave the relationship with the US in a really good condition. Well, let's chat now to Beth Rigby, shall we, who joins us in the studio. Beth, it's just another extraordinary day. I mean, it feels like a really big story.
Yeah, it's a huge story. The first thing I'd say about Peter Mandelson's statement there saying that he had no alternative. I mean, that will just make so many Labour MPs and members absolutely furious because once those emails had come out showing that he had been supporting a convicted sex offender against victims, because that's what he was doing, and he said it was a massive error and I deeply regret it and I was conned by this charismatic man. But despite all of that, you have a figure in government, a government that's trying to halve violence against women and girls, a Prime Minister that was a public prosecutor that was trying to convict child sex offenders and those in grooming gangs, And you have the ambassador still trying to fight on when this cache of emails has been released. It has made so many people in the party absolutely furious. And I imagine, and I have no idea, that Keir Starmer is absolutely furious. And what was interesting this morning, Sophie, was the way in which it all came about. There was a meeting in Downing Street, first thing, between Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, who had been leading the programme against violence against women and girls, and then they decided to sack Peter Mandelson. But that Peter Mandelson decided to try and fight on, orchestrated an interview to try and get his side of the story out when it emerged that those emails were in the public domain or were about to be published. It has left a really deep stink within the Labour Party. And that brings me to my second point about Starmer. I felt on the benches yesterday, watching Prime Minister's questions, he was deeply uncomfortable. It was like a holding position. And I think that once those emails had come out, had he not sacked Peter Mandelson, he would have had a mutiny on his benches, because there were so many Labour MPs, and particularly female MPs, absolutely incandescent. And there's a taste of that in our pod with Harriet Harman. So whatever Keir Starmer felt, there was no option here. Yeah. If you want to be the guy that cleans up politics, that backs victims over perpetrators, that stands on a ticket of law and order, there's no option here for him. But there are so many questions still about what did Number 10 know when. There's a big question about political judgment. There's lots of things swirling around that advisors had suggested to Starmer that Mandelson could come back because he has the magic Midas touch, and could he work with the US government and with Trump. And there's sort of talk about whether or not Starmer had misgivings, and this is where the political judgment comes in, because ultimately, had he had misgivings and he put Mandelson back in post, knowing that he had a relationship with Epstein, that Keir Starmer carries the can for this. So even if he's furious about it, he carries the can. So there's a question about judgment. And as Sam was reporting earlier, Sam Coates, our colleague, there's also questions about whether warnings were made, concerns were raised, and they were overridden, and he was appointed anyway. Did the Prime Minister know about those concerns? Did Number 10 know about those concerns? Did the staff know about those concerns? So there's, questions still to answer. And then the final thought, we've got a state visit in 6 days' time. The US President has been asked repeatedly about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He hates those questions, and now all of those questions are to the fore. So it's a big headache for the government. But there was a decision overnight, I think yesterday, with a sense of maybe Mandelson can just hang on because we don't want Epstein to blow up in the coming days. And I think when that email cache was released, they knew that it was blowing up, and actually let's clear him out of the way so he's not in the frame. But the idea now that those questions will not be asked, it's deeply embarrassing for the government, but also the royal family. So it's everyone is tarnished by this Epstein connection. And this is really, really uncomfortable for the Prime Minister. And 2 weeks into a reset, I mean, he must be feeling a bit shell-shocked, I'd imagine. Yeah, you can certainly can, and also you can understand that anger, I think, as well as you describing Beth. And Beth, stay with us, because I just want to bring in our duo as well for the evening. The Labour peer, Baroness Diane Hayter, and the former Conservative Special Advisor, James Starkey. Great to have you both with us. Diane, what's your take on this? Because, look, you must know Lord Mandelson, right?
I've known him a long time, shall we put it that way? It's interesting, I was with a colleague as the emails were being released yesterday, and he simply said to me, he's toast. It didn't take much political judgment. I think it took him a nanosecond to get there. I have a lot of regrets about it. I think one of my biggest regrets is that Peter didn't resign straight away. I think that would have shown actually a real recognition that something he'd done was wrong. If I just take a second, I've just been reading a book, an old book by David Owen, and it's about hubris. And it's very interesting because and I brought it with me because I think David Owen's description of hubris, which he says an intoxication of power, which is a heady drug, and he describes all the symptoms, including pride, but also an excessive confidence in his own judgment. And, you know, one of the saddest things, because Peter's bright, but the judgment he used to give us when he was advising was, you know, how does it look at the outside, do the right thing straight away. And yet the one person that he didn't take that advice from was himself. He should have cut it a long time ago. He should have been clear, absolutely, to Keir at the time he was appointed. But it would have been good if he'd resigned and not put the Prime Minister through that last bit.
I absolutely love the fact you just brought in the quote, by the way. I'm here for that. I'm here for more of that as well. James, what do you take that?
I don't have a quote, I'm afraid.
Where's your piece of paper?
But I do. I mean, I think the hubris point is a valid one. My observation is politicians are often have a great sense of things, but are terrible at giving themselves advice. So I think that's quite a common theme. I think on this, it's a mess that you could see coming. I mean, this is not to attack the government, but in terms of judgment, much of the flavour of what we've seen over the past 2 days was known and reported in the FT a couple of years ago. And Peter Mandelson's relationship with Epstein has been known for a long time. So in terms of the risk, that's been there since the moment they appointed him. This was always a risk waiting to happen. And so the kind of explanation over the past 24, 48 hours, which has been more of like, well, we didn't know about these emails, it's a bit more like, oh no, we've been caught out. Because you knew the relationship post-conviction, they are not new things.
This is my other thing as well, I have to say, because the one person who definitely knew about the emails the whole time is Peter Mandelson, right? Because he wrote the emails. So I don't really understand, if you're trying to do the thing that's right or wrong, it shouldn't just be once they've been made public. He wrote them. He knew he wrote them. It's not about resigning. Should he have ever accepted the job in the first place, knowing that he, behaved in that way?
It is about that overconfidence, isn't it? I mean, since you mentioned quotes, I mean, am I allowed to say this on here? You know how David Owen is described by Healy? The good fairy gave him looks, charisma, brains. Unfortunately, the bad fairy made him a shit. I'm sorry about that.
I am going to have to come in and apologise for the language that we have just heard on the programme.
I'm sorry about that. That was Dennis Healy.
The answer is no, we're not allowed to say that, by the way.
But the interesting thing is, of course, that Peter had that same combination of real political feeling, of political understanding, of ability to give advice to others, but actually a personality that was also attracted to these very rich, charismatic men on the whole, with big personalities. And it's really interesting that those two things go together, and it's a great weakness. So I think he probably believed that the good side of him would dominate, if you like, or would overplay, or would make up for the weaknesses, and not the right judgment.
Is Keir Starmer in trouble, do you think?
Look, let's not forget, this is allegedly phase 2. This is the reset. And 2 weeks into the reset, we've had the Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Leader go in scandal. And we've had a high-profile US ambassador go. So things aren't going well. I mean, I think Labour have got a couple of critical points coming up. This deputy leadership that we may discuss is going to play out over the next few weeks. But the budget is absolutely huge for them now. It is a massive moment for Keir Starmer and his Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. And then they're next year going to go into locals, which will be difficult for a number of people, but very difficult if Labour were to lose Wales, kind of symbolically for them.
Thanks both very much indeed. I did just want to bring you an update on the bomb threat that we began the programme with, because we've just heard this from a spokesperson from the Democratic National Committee that it is not a credible bomb threat. So just to give you that update, it was an abundance of caution that they had the interior sweep and that they are grateful to the police for responding quickly and professionally. Well, we've been talking about Lord Mandelson, and of course that story is sure to feature in tomorrow's papers. We'll have our extended press preview from 10:30 this evening with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. Joining us will be the Chief Executive of Total Politics Group, Mark Wallace, and the crossbench peer and former Paralympic champion, Baroness Gray Thompson. We're joined this evening by the Conservative Party chair, that is Kevin Hollingrake. Great to have you on the programme
Sophie.
Today.
Hello.
So what's your response to the sacking of Peter Mandelson?
Well, Peter Mandelson had to go, but the questions now circle around Keir Starmer. I mean, why was he appointed in the first place? This is somebody with a very dodgy background to start with. There was evidence out there with links with Epstein back then when he was appointed. And then when this more evidence came out, some of the very, humiliating exchanges between Peter Mandelson and Epstein, the Prime Minister expressed full confidence in him when pushed by Kemi Badenoch 6 times, and then sent his minister out on the rounds this morning to reassert that confidence in him. So what's it say about the judgment of Keir Starmer, both in appointing him, but also not sacking him when this came to light?
I guess what Number 10 would say is that it's this additional information, including, of course, that Bloomberg leak that came out overnight. And then in light of that additional information, they met this morning and then sacked him. They did the right thing.
I don't think that stands. It was quite clear. If anybody read the Telegraph on Wednesday morning, you could see that his position was untenable. Yet Keir Starmer defended him time and time again at Prime Minister's questions. And then the following day, didn't even reflect on it overnight, then the following day, and only had to effectively sack him when put under pressure to do so, again by a parliamentary action by ourselves. So it was quite clear he had to resign. What it says everything about Keir Starmer, that he's about his judgment, but also how weak he is. Because we saw the same thing last week as well with Angela Rayner. How he, despite the evidence, despite his previous statements about the fact somebody in that position would have to resign...
It's right to go through the due process with Angela Rayner. I'll be honest, I think these are quite different, to be honest, right? You had the parliamentary, watchdog, ministerial watchdog look at this, you wait for the report, as soon as the report, you make the decision. That's due process, isn't it? Come on.
Well, that's not what Keir Starmer's called for before, when similar allegations against other people. Where there's evidence came to light about people from different parties when Keir Starmer was in opposition, he said there shouldn't be any need for investigation. Those people should be sacked or should resign. That's what he said at the time. So it's completely hypocritical. And let's not forget when apparently now, when Mandelson was appointed, there were security concerns. I think that was a story brought by Sky News. So what we need to see now is the full evidence of everything. Who knew what when? That's what we're calling for. Release of all the exchanges between Morgan McSweeney, one of the key advisors in Number 10, who's very close to Peter Mandelson, and indeed Keir Starmer and Peter Mandelson and Morgan McSweeney. All this must be released, and the security advice, the security service advice. This must be released because we need to see what exactly Keir Starmer knew when, right from the start when the appointment was made.
Donald Trump is, of course, coming to the UK next week. He had a pretty good relationship with Lord Mandelson, who was known as a Trump whisperer. Could be a bit awkward, do you think?
It would have been awkward had he not been sacked, wouldn't it? Because how many questions would there have been of Peter Mandelson, Keir Starmer, about why he was still in post? So he had no option really to go. But that's what was shocking about Keir Starmer yesterday. He seemed to be nonplussed, not expecting the questions, when everybody knew that would be the attack line from Kemi Badenoch, which he did so effectively.
Just on Donald Trump, because of course he knew Jeffrey Epstein as well. Donald Trump's said very strongly that messages and drawings in this birthday book that was signed Donald Trump weren't actually from him. Do you think he has questions to answer?
Listen, we should look after our own affairs. We've got enough on with the United Kingdom in getting our house in order, and Keir Starmer needs to get that house in order. You've effectively got civil war right now in the Labour Party. That's where we are. I'm not sure how much longer Keir Starmer can carry on like this. So I think Keir Starmer should focus on the domestic problems he's got, both in terms of what's happening to the economy because of their actions, because of overtaxing the economy and more regulations coming down the track. So at the moment, it's a government of chaos that's in crisis that's heading towards civil war.
OK, you should know about that, right? Thank you very much for being on the programme. Good to have you on. Right, let's get the take, shall we, of the political commentator, Adam Bolton. Adam, good to have you on Politics Hub, as always, particularly on this story. What's your reaction to what we've heard about Peter Mandelson?
Well, I think it became inevitable that he had to go because of the level of criticism of his behaviour and, frankly, his bad judgment in continuing to be a friend of Mr. Epstein and telling him that he should fight his convictions. Peter Mandelson is saying that he believed wrongly the reassurances he was given by Epstein that there was no substance to the charges and indeed the conviction against him. And now Peter Mandelson, as he said this week in an interview, deeply regrets the fact that he ever met Epstein. But he compromised himself. He showed mistaken judgment. Perhaps he shouldn't have accepted or pursued the job of ambassador, knowing that there was this cloud of his former relationship with Epstein handing over him. But he did, and now he's fallen.
How much, I'm interested to get your take on this, how much do you think it reflects on Keir Starmer? How much of a problem is it for the Prime Minister?
Well, I think it was clear that Keir Starmer and his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, admired Peter Mandelson for what he'd done for the Labour Party, his knowledge of trade because of his role as EU Trade Commissioner when Britain was a member of the EU, and they wanted him in the job. And people will now question that judgment because Peter Mandelson has always been a controversial figure. He's resigned or been sacked from government twice before. He has never really disguised his liking for the high life or his liking for rich people. So it was always a gamble hiring him as ambassador to the US. I think they would feel that initially it really paid off. Peter Mandelson used his charm and his skill and his contacts to get close to the Trump administration to seal that deal of a trade agreement. But of course, there was always this lurking menace, which has now exploded. Exploded, incidentally, not because of anything Peter Mandelson did, but because of American politicians wanting to pursue, as you were just saying to Mr. Hollinrake, quite what Donald Trump's been up to in the past with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, how do you think it's going to go next week when Donald Trump comes over to the UK?
Well, obviously they think that by settling this matter now and not hanging on to Peter Mandelson, it will diminish the interests of the media in any interactions with Donald Trump and the Prime Minister to talk about it. So that might well be a gain. The thing about Donald Trump, though, is extremely unpredictable. We know that he had taken a personal liking to Peter Mandelson, that he held his hand in the Oval Office, said how good looking he was and how much he liked his accent. So it's always possible that Donald Trump, who can't be taken for granted what he's going to say, might actually say, I rather like that Peter Mandelson bloke in a fit of devilment. So we can't really tell, but clearly I don't think Peter Mandelson or who is the ambassador is going to be the focus of the visit as it would have been in much of the commentary. And I have to say, we at Sky know James Roscoe, the acting ambassador, very well. He's an extremely competent and smooth diplomat and has already, both with Peter Mandelson and with his predecessor, Karen Pierce, been at the centre of building relationships with the Trump White House. So I think that side of things will be in safe hands.
Always good to talk. Adam, thank you very much for your time. You're watching the Politics Hub. Coming up, the race to replace Rayner. We're down to the last two standing, but will it be Lucy Powell or Bridget Phillipson who takes the reins?
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky Security and Defence Editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Hello, welcome back. Well, the race to be Labour's next deputy leader has been hotting up all week. At the starting line was 6 MPs, but now we're down to the final 2. Our political correspondent Liz Bates is here. So, Liz, what's going on?
Well, the remaining candidates that were not going to hit that threshold of 80 nominations from fellow MPs have dropped out today. So we have our final 2 candidates. We have Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, Lucy Powell, who until very recently was the Commons leader, was part of the government. She was dropped in that reshuffle. She will now be the sort of anti-government candidate, if you like. So we have our final 2 in this deputy leadership contest. In terms of, well, first of all, the process. So now we go to... Oh, here they are behind me. So these are the nominations. So you can see Bridget Phillipson got quite a few more than Lucy Powell. The rest, in the end, had to drop out. Bel Ribeiro Addy, she was the left-wing candidate. She, did OK, but only 24. She had to drop out in the end. So you can see there behind me the final 2. So in terms of what happens now, we go into the next bit of the process. They will have to get, it's quite a sort of convoluted Labour Party process. They'll have to get backing from CLPs, local Labour parties, a bit of union backing. Both of them will get that. This is a contest that will now go on throughout the Labour Party conference, which potentially could overshadow it a little bit. There'll be a hustings. I have been through and had a look back at polling around, first of all, the 2 candidates, so Bridget Phillipson and Lucy Powell, because in the end it will be the Labour Party members that vote and decide who wins between these 2. So in terms of Labour Party members, the preference between them is very much Bridget Phillipson, and I think that's because she just has a much higher profile within the Labour Party. But, and we talked about this yesterday, Sophie, now the candidate that is the government candidate, backed, if you like, by Keir Starmer, is Bridget Phillipson. Lucy Powell has the backing of Andy Burnham. Now, if you look at polling when it comes to Keir Starmer versus Andy Burnham, if you ask Labour members who they prefer, they say Andy Burnham. Who would they like to replace Keir Starmer in the event that he had to step down? Andy Burnham. He is hugely popular within the membership. So if it starts to feel like a contest between those 2, who do you prefer? The Labour Party members, I think, might choose Lucy Powell, but it really depends on how the dynamics unfold. It's a long contest. The voting for members will open October the 8th. It goes on then for 2 weeks. We'll get a result, I think, on the 25th of October.
I want to bring in a duo as well. I just can't get away from the fact that this will be all a kind of referendum on the leader. Bridget Phillipson is Keir Starmer's candidate. We know Lucy Powell isn't his candidate because he's literally just sacked her from his cabinet. Do you think that's the reality, or do you think there's a bit more going on, James?
It might be. Can I ask one question? Am I allowed to?
No.
Is Andy Burnham publicly backed?
He has endorsed Lucy Powell.
That's all public. And so I'm really curious to see how that plays out, because I won't claim to know the ins and outs of a Labour Party politics, but I have worked on leadership elections. And so my observation would be they're just very messy. And so that's why I was kind of curious it'd be interesting to see how public Andy will, now he's given his support, what else he'll do. Because if that's going to play out over the next few weeks. What I do know is you've got the public stuff where one candidate, where the supporters of Lucy Powell maybe say, well, we need someone to keep Starmer in check. Basically, he's too right-wing, not ideal for him. But then you have all the kind of background briefing that goes on, which, I may or may not have been involved in.
I should say Andy Burnham would maintain, I think if he was here, he would say he is in no way trying to undermine the Labour leadership.
Of course he's not.
What he said was that he wants representation for the North West, and Lucy Powell is a North West MP.
But I think I would also point out that I think every person who then ran in a Conservative leadership contest said that before they ran in a leadership contest.
I've got my phone out because I just want to read a message that I was sent by I guess it was a Labour source, it's probably fair to say, earlier this week. It's the most Labour thing ever that we're going to have an all-female field for this election, and it's going to be a proxy Starmer versus Burnham fight, and the whole debate is going to be which man this woman represents do you think is right? Diane.
I was about to make the point, so I'm so glad someone made it better than I was going to. I mean, this is appalling. A couple of things. One is I don't think you can call Lucy the anti-government. She's been in government all the way through. She was leader of the House, and she's been absolutely part of the government. It's true, not over the last week, but she cannot be seen as anti-government. I think we actually have to start with what is this job? And this job is to support the leader. I mean, the idea that you would have in any way a leader and a deputy leader who don't play on the same side would be awful. I think Angela Rayner has played a blinder on this. I'm sure in private she said things to Keir that I don't want to know about, and I'm sure she said them effectively, but it was absolutely her job as an ambassador for the party to speak for the collective leadership, and that's the leader and the deputy leader, but it's the whole of the cabinet. So I will be judging this, of which of these two are actually going to stand up for the Labour in government, because that's the real job. And that's what I hope the Labour Party members will think about. What's going to be best for the Labour Party.
And who do you think would be best for the Labour Party then?
Well, I think that the problem on the numbers that I've only just seen, so thank you for that, is that the PLP clearly have more confidence in Bridget Phillipson than they have in Lucy, and I think that's a bit of a problem. You know, again, early on when it used to be, I'm so old, of course, in the old days when I remember, it was the MPs themselves who elected the leader and the deputy leader. And as soon as we moved away from that, people used to say, but look, one day you could have someone who hasn't got the confidence of the MPs, and that is a danger. So I do think that members ought to take cognizance of the fact that the MPs who are going to have to work with this leader and deputy leader have made a pretty clear choice on those nominations. And I think that's really important. We're in government now. We're not in opposition. We're not, a ginger party. And therefore, we've got to do something that will make the whole of the Labour team work together.
Really interesting. Great to have you all discussing this evening as well. You're watching The Politics Hub coming up. The FBI released new images as the hunt for the killer of right-wing influencer and staunch Trump supporter Charlie Kirk continues. Hello, welcome back. Now, more details are emerging tonight about the shooting of the far-right influencer and staunch Trump supporter Charlie Kirk. The FBI have released these two images. They say the suspect, a person of college age, is still on the run and that they found a high-powered rifle. Well, Charlie Kirk was shot and killed at a rally at Utah Valley University last night. Speaking during the 9/11 commemorations in New York this afternoon, Donald Trump announced he would be awarding him the Medal of Freedom.
Let me express the horror and grief so many Americans at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk have felt. Charlie was a giant of his generation, a champion of liberty, and an inspiration to millions and millions of people. Our prayers are with his wonderful wife, Eric, and his beautiful children. Fantastic people they are. We miss him greatly, yet I have no doubt that Charlie's voice and the courage he put into the hearts of countless people, especially young people, will live on. I'm pleased to announce that I will soon be awarding Charlie Kirk posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The date of the ceremony will be announced, and I can only guarantee you one thing, that we will have a very big crowd.
Donald Trump there speaking about this truly shocking story. We'll, of course, keep you up to date with anything coming from the police as they try and find the shooter. Just want to take you to a UK story now. The Labour MP Sharon Hodgson has been speaking after her constituency building was set alight. She said that there is no place for this kind of violence in our society. Labour MP Sharon Hodgson there. Well, a man has been arrested on suspicion of criminal damage and arson. Downing Street's condemned the attack. It said it's important that politicians are able to go about their work freely and with confidence. Well, let's speak again to Dan and James, shall we? It's just... I find it so troubling, I'll be honest, the violence that we're seeing. And, you know, I know it's not the only time this has happened. We've seen political violence in the past. Historically, it's happened as well. But it does feel there is a particular aggression around it at the minute. Here in the US, Dan, I don't know what your reflections are.
I mean, it is terrifying. And it was, you know, there's been an attempt in this country to sort of shut down discussion. People don't like to hear things that would offend them. We need safe spaces. I disagree with that. We should hear. And you know, the amazing thing about this man, he was taking a message that is unpopular to many people, and he was taking it into the public. He was doing something that I really champion, even if I would have disagreed probably with every word. And so to take him down at that moment when he is willing to expose his views to opponents seems particularly sad. And we've seen it in America, but over Nancy Pelosi's husband, and all sorts of dreadful things happening. But the problem is that it has been sort of condoned even by the president in America. You know, I think that what happened when the storming of Capitol after the election of Joe Biden, and then afterwards that Trump pardoned the people who had attacked, who had invaded the Capitol using violence, you know, we've never seen anything like that in this country. We condone violence. We've just seen it from number 10, condoning what happened to Sharon Hodgson's office. And I fear for America, where they have sort of accepted that you can try and make political change by violence, and that is particularly sad. And as I say, you know, all praise to Charlie Kirk, that he was willing to be in public, to make unpopular statements, but the price of that he's paid very, very heavily. I don't think we're in the same position here, but there is quite a lot of it. I often have to go to meetings and go through people barracking and shouting, and we saw it in Scotland this week that a number of women were literally drowned out by men who didn't want to hear what they said, so that literally their voices were silenced by violence or by noise.
Aggression.
By aggression. And I think we just all have to stand up and say, that will not do. We will condemn it wherever we see it.
James?
Yeah, I mean, I would second the views on, you know, watching someone who's been prepared to just go and debate people wherever. it makes it, I don't know, particularly shocking in a way. My reflections are, I think politicians, it was a reminder politicians' language counts. And I think there's a duty on everyone. I think we've seen in the US, there is inflammatory language. And I think, it's a reminder if it's ever needed to politicians in this country that, when you're in a leadership role, that how you talk about things is important. And also, my first thought when I see this is obviously I have friends who are politicians, some of whom are high profile. I don't know many MPs on either side of the House that haven't received a death threat. It's a common thing. It's the reason why there's constant discussion about the level of security in Parliament. It's the reason why they have to have panic alarms. I don't think we are where they are in the US. I hope not. But it's not. It is an issue here, and the fact that people feel that whether it's on Twitter or into their email accounts, and there's been other attacks on MP's office, it's not a good thing to see.
Yeah, I think that's it. I am constantly shocked by. You talk to an MP, and they might be like, "Oh yeah, I need security to walk around my constituency, or I wear a stab vest, or my family's been threatened," and I'm like, "What?" And they're like, yeah, I mean, obviously, it's just part. It's almost that kind of normalisation of it. I find particularly shocking.
One of my best friends is an MP. Someone was sent to prison last year for death threats. He didn't know much about it until about a year after it all happened, and the police said, "Well, this guy's now up in court." So, another friend of mine, a former MP, he still gets them. And so I think, and that's why I think language is important. Because I think there's an element where you can kind of normalise. Again, it goes back to the debate point. You can debate any of our politicians and you can disagree with them, but there's something in the way you do that.
That's totally right. Thanks both very much indeed. Well, let's turn now to an issue that Sky News has been investigating for nearly 2 years. It concerns one of the country's biggest trade unions, the GMB. Now, we've heard from multiple women accounts of alleged bullying, misogyny and sexism, experiences they say are commonplace within the union. But speaking to my colleague Serena Barker-Singh, the new General Secretary, Gary Smith, strongly denied the claims. This is Serena's analysis.
For nearly 2 years, Sky News has been investigating allegations of bullying and harassment inside one of the UK's biggest trade unions. We've been listening to women with accounts of all of these. They say it's rife within the GMB union. And recently, the GMB has had a terrible track record with misogyny and sexism within its ranks, because an internal report in 2020 branded the union institutionally sexist. That led to a new leader being appointed, Gary Smith, in an attempt at a clean start. And he did promise to clean things up. But since then, GMB women who we've spoken to say it's only got worse. Last year, members supported a move towards industrial action over the issue, and this year it's escalated, with the Equalities Watchdog now asking GMB formally how it's complying with the Equality Act. But the leader of the union says he thinks there's no problem at all. This is what he said when I caught up with him at the TUC conference this week.
Do you recognise there's a problem in your union?
No, we don't.
No problem at all?
No, we don't.
Do you think you're taking this seriously?
When we get things wrong, we will deal with them. When we don't, if we get things wrong, we deal with them when there's issues. But we're a good organisation, we cleaned up our organisation, and we think the culture in the union is pretty positive.
Lots of women have expressed fears that they say they're being harassed in your union, enough that the Equalities Watchdog is looking into. Do you not take this seriously?
This is not accurate reporting, actually, and we don't accept that explanation about our organisation. I'm sorry.
You don't think there's any harassment or bullying in your union? Thank you very much. Thank you. Do you want to say anything to the women who have expressed concerns? Do you want to apologise to them? Nothing to say to them?
Now, GMB categorically denies claims of a culture of bullying or sexism within the union. They say they responded to a 2020 report that found institutional sexism within the union by swiftly establishing new structures and policies to effectively deal with any allegation of bullying, sexism or harassment. I should say, ever since we started reporting on this, we have repeatedly asked Gary Smith for an interview, and he's never engaged with us. That's why we went to find him. And now his members can finally hear his response to these serious issues directly from him.
Serena Barker-Singh there with that report. Well, still to come on the Politics Hub. I'll be honest, it is a personal highlight of my parliamentary calendar. Which political dogs got awards at this year's Westminster Dog Show?
Here tonight at 8, we'll get the latest on the murder of Charlie Kirk in Utah. And I'll speak to Katie Amos, whose father was the murdered MP, Sir David Amos. Plus, more questions for Sir Keir Starmer after the sacking of Lord Mandelson. As Sky News learns, MI5 warned against his appointment as ambassador to the US. Plus, we'll get all the details as Chelsea face 74 charges relating to payments to agents. All that much more on the UK Tonight from 8.
I'm Helen Ann Smith. I'm Sky's Asia correspondent, and I'm based here in Beijing.
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did. He did it very affectionately. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Martha Kellner, and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. Sky News, the full story first.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Hello, welcome back. Finally, to one of the best days of the parliamentary calendar. We all need a bit of cheering up. It's been a heavy show for us so far. It's the Westminster Dog Show. Now, we were up to our ears. Now, I'm just going to break off because you're going to get a lot of this, all right? So if you're averse to puns, switch off now. We were up to our ears with 18 contenders from across the House of Commons. The bonanza, I'm going there, of poochers, including Zuzu, Peanut, and 2 dogs called Toffee, owned by different MPs. It was a rough contest. Stop laughing at the back. But the trophy went to Labour MP Sarah Edwards and 13-year-old Poiki. Now, Sarah describes Poiki as talkative and cheeky and says that if he could demand a barbecue every day, he would. So he's the dog after my own heart. That sounds like a great idea. But the winner, this is a worse one, so I'm sorry about this one in advance. The winner of the poor Blick vote, that wasn't good, that one. But the winner of the vote was Jenny, the lovely guide dog to the Lib Dem MP, Steve Darling. I got through the puns. I'm impressed with myself, I have to say. Right. I love this whole story. I love a bit of the Westminster dogs. What do you make of the beautiful dogs on display then?
Well, they're better looking than the MPs, I think. Well, not being a dog person, I mean, how would you actually choose? Is it how quiet they are? I'd just vote for the quietest.
Would you? The one that was the most best behaved?
At night, yeah. I'd have their barks and I'd give the prize to the quietest.
I like that, the quietest bark.
Do we know if they have to do tricks, or is it literally just...
I actually don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry. That is. You show it on my research.
I don't know how. I don't know if viewers can see it. There's a Dalmatian.
I mean, I can't imagine that. It's not
it.
crufts, is it? I don't think they're going to be doing loads of, tricks. Probably.
I think I would have given it to Dalmatian just.
Maybe they put them in the lobby, and you have to see whether you vote in the correct lobby.
That's true.
And if they do the way vote in the correct lobby, then they win.
True. That's true. You think they'd be whipped?
It's probably the best.
You didn't say that.
I was going to say it might be the best chance of getting benefits through is just let the dogs vote for it.
Stop. Where's the Dalmatian though? That was the most beautiful one. So I know. I'm team.
I think it's a scandal.
It's a scandal.
It's a fake vote. According to a recount.
Yeah. Which was? I want to know which one the deputy was. It won the deputy then.
Yeah. I'm not sure about that. Anyway, that's enough of that. Thanks both very much. Lovely to have you both on the programme and your first poll hub as well, Diane. So good to see you. Well, that's it from us tonight. I'll see you on Monday at 7 p.m. Up next, it's UK Tonight with Sarah J. Mee, and then at 9 p.m, you've got The World with Yada Hakeem. But I'll see you on Monday. Have a good Friday. Have a good weekend as well.